Have you ever been in a situation where you just wanted to be left alone, only to have someone's entitlement shatter your peace? What happens when a simple request for a window seat spirals into a public display of arrogance and prejudice? Today, we're telling the story of Dr. Evelyn Reed, a brilliant woman on the most important trip of her life, and Caroline Preston, a corporate powerhouse who believed the world owed her everything, including a seat she didn't book. But Caroline made one fatal mistake. She underestimated the woman she was trying to bully. This isn't just a story about an airplane seat. It's about what happens when decency and arrogance collide in the most spectacular way. Before we begin, where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. If you love inspiring stories of resilience and justice, make sure to hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more incredible tales. Your support helps us share these impactful stories with even more people. Now, let's get into it. The air in the international terminal at JFK was a familiar symphony of chaos and anticipation. It was a humid Tuesday in late September, and the building hummed with the energy of 1,000 intersecting journeys. Suitcase wheels skittered across polished floors, announcements echoed in a dozen languages, and the scent of overpriced coffee mingled with jet fuel. For Dr. Evelyn Reed, this controlled chaos was the prelude to discovery. At 34, Evelyn was a rising star in a field of stars, literally. An astrophysicist with a specialty in exoplanetary systems, she possessed a mind that could comfortably dance with concepts like stellar parallax and gravitational lensing. Yet she navigated the terrestrial world with a quiet, almost unassuming grace. Her hair was styled in neat, intricate box braids that cascaded over her shoulders, and her eyes, dark and thoughtful, seemed to hold a galaxy of their own. Today they held a flicker of nervous excitement. She clutched her boarding pass for Swiss Air Flight LX-17 to Geneva. This wasn't a vacation. This was the culmination of 3 years of relentless work, of late nights spent staring at spectrographic data, of battling for telescope time and research grants. In Geneva, she was scheduled to be the keynote speaker at the annual European Symposium on Astronomical Research. She would be presenting her team's groundbreaking findings on Kepler 78b, an exoplanet so close to its star that its surface was a sea of molten lava, a world that challenged existing theories of planetary formation. This presentation could redefine her career and secure funding for the next decade. Her seat assignment was 24A, a window seat. It was a small but significant comfort she always afforded herself on long-haul flights. It wasn't just about watching the land masses shrink into textured maps or the clouds form into impossible sun-kissed continents. For Evelyn, the window seat was a place of perspective. Gazing out at the deep, endless indigo of the upper atmosphere, she felt a tangible connection to the vast, silent cosmos she spent her life studying. It was a reminder of the scale of things, a way to shrink earthly anxieties down to their proper, insignificant size. It was her moving meditation room, her portal to the infinite. After clearing the final security check, she found her gate, C26. The boarding area was already crowded. She found a quiet corner, pulled out her tablet, and began one last review of her presentation slides. The complex equations and stunning artist renderings of distant worlds filled the screen, a secret language that described the universe's poetry. She was so engrossed, she barely noticed when they called for her boarding group. Joining the queue, she felt the familiar thrum of the jet bridge. Stepping onto the aircraft was like entering a different realm. The soft lighting, the hushed tones of the cabin crew, the clean, filtered air. It was a capsule designed to transport you not just physically but mentally. A friendly flight attendant named Liam, with a warm smile and kind eyes, greeted her. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Reed," he said, glancing at her boarding pass. "Thank you, Liam," she replied, her voice soft but clear. She made her way down the narrow aisle of the economy cabin, her carry-on rolling silently behind her. Row 24. There it was. 24A, a perfect, clean window looking out over the massive wing of the Airbus A330. She slid her carry-on into the overhead bin, placed her laptop bag under the seat in front of her, and settled in. She buckled her seatbelt, leaned her head against the cool plastic of the cabin wall, and closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep, centering breath. Geneva, she thought. It's all happening. The boarding process continued, a slow but steady stream of passengers finding their places. The middle seat, 24B, was soon occupied by a young man who immediately put on his headphones and buried his face in a book. Evelyn gave him a polite nod, which he returned, and then she turned her attention back to the window. The ground crew buzzed around the aircraft like diligent insects loading baggage, fueling the wings. It was all a beautiful, intricate dance. And then the music stopped. A sharp, imperious voice cut through the cabin's low hum. Excuse me, you're in my seat." Evelyn opened her eyes. Standing in the aisle were a man and a woman who looked as if they had just stepped out of a high-end catalog. The man, in his late 50s, was dressed in a tailored blazer and looked deeply uncomfortable. The woman, perhaps a few years younger, was the source of the voice. She was impeccably dressed in a cream-colored pantsuit, her blonde hair coiffed into a severe, perfect bob. Her face was a mask of strained patience, her eyes scanning Evelyn from head to toe with a dismissive flick. Evelyn checked her boarding pass again, just to be certain. "I'm sorry," she said calmly, "but I believe this is seat 24A. The woman, who Evelyn would soon learn was named Caroline Preston, let out a short, incredulous laugh. "No, I don't think you understand. I need the window seat. Robert, show her your pass." The man, Robert, fumbled for his boarding pass, his face flushing with embarrassment. "Caroline, please, it's not a big deal. I can take the aisle." He held out his pass. It clearly read 24C, Caroline's own pass, which she snatched from his hand and thrust towards Evelyn, read 25C, the aisle seat in the row behind them. Evelyn looked at the passes, then back at Caroline. "Ma'am, your seat is 25C. This is row 24, and my seat is 24A. "I am perfectly aware of what my ticket says," Caroline snapped, her voice rising in volume, attracting the attention of nearby passengers. "I have an arrangement. We were supposed to be seated together, and I require a window seat. It's a medical necessity. I get terribly disoriented otherwise. Now be a dear and move to the aisle seat." The condescending phrase, "be a dear," landed with a thud. Evelyn felt a familiar, weary tightening in her chest, the kind she felt whenever she encountered this specific brand of unearned authority. She had dealt with it in academia, in grant committees, in life. But she had a keynote to deliver. She would not let this woman derail her focus. She maintained her calm, level tone. "I'm sorry to hear about your condition, but this is the seat I selected and paid for. Perhaps the flight attendant can assist you in finding another window seat if one is available." "I don't want another window seat," Caroline insisted, her voice now sharp as broken glass. "I want this one. My husband is here. I need to be next to the window. It is not a complicated request. Some people are just so inconsiderate." She wasn't looking at Evelyn anymore, but speaking to the cabin at large, painting herself as the victim. Robert looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. "Caroline, for heaven's sake," he muttered. "Let's just take our seats. We can ask the purser." "No, Robert," she hissed. "It's a matter of principle. I have a platinum status with this airline alliance. I'm a paying customer, a very good customer. My comfort should be a priority." She turned her icy gaze back to Evelyn. "Are you going to move? Or do I need to make this a bigger issue?" The gauntlet had been thrown. The quiet peace of seat 24A had been shattered. Evelyn looked from Caroline's face, contorted with entitlement, to Robert's, awash with shame, and then out the window at the vast open sky. A bigger issue, Evelyn thought. This woman had no idea what a big issue was. Her world was a tiny, self-important bubble. And in that moment, Evelyn decided that bubble needed a gentle but firm pinprick of perspective. The standoff in the aisle of row 24 had created a bottleneck. Passengers behind Caroline and Robert were murmuring, shifting their bags impatiently. The young man in the middle seat had taken off his headphones, his eyes wide as he watched the drama unfold. Seeing the commotion, Liam, the flight attendant, made his way over. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his professional smile firmly in place, but his eyes showing a flicker of practiced weariness. He'd seen this movie before. Caroline immediately rounded on him, seeing him as an instrument to enforce her will. "Yes, there is a problem. This young woman is in my seat and she's refusing to move." Liam glanced at Evelyn, who simply held up her boarding pass for him to see. He nodded, then turned back to Caroline. "Ma'am, can I see your boarding pass, please?" Caroline huffed, thrusting her ticket at him as if it were a weapon. "It's 25C, I know, but there's been a mistake. We were supposed to be together and I medically require a window seat. My husband's is 24C. You need to move her." She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at Evelyn, as if she were an inanimate object. Liam examined the passes with practiced neutrality. "I see, ma'am. Your assigned seat is indeed 25C, and this passenger is correctly seated in 24A. Unfortunately, the flight is completely full today, so I won't be able to reseat you to another window." He offered a placating smile. "What I can do is ask the gentleman in 24C if he'd be willing to swap with you, so you can have the aisle seat in this row next to your husband." "I don't want the aisle." Caroline's voice was now a low, furious tremor. She was losing control, and the public nature of her failure was visibly infuriating her. "I need the window. Why is this so difficult for everyone to understand? Does your platinum status mean nothing?" Evelyn had remained silent throughout the exchange, letting the airline's rules and Liam's professionalism do the talking. But now Caroline turned her full venomous attention back to her. "Look," she said, leaning in closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, condescending whisper. "I don't know what kind of trip you're on. Maybe you're just excited to see the clouds. But I have a multi-million-dollar deal I need to prepare for on this flight. I need to be able to focus. The window seat helps me do that. My work is very important. Can you appreciate that?" The implication was clear. My life, my work, my time is more important than yours. That was it, the final straw. Evelyn slowly unbuckled her seatbelt and rose from her seat, a maneuver that surprised Caroline, who took a half-step back. Evelyn was taller than she'd appeared sitting down, and her calm, steady gaze seemed to intensify. She didn't look angry. She looked disappointed. She addressed not just Caroline, but her embarrassed husband and the now rapt audience of nearby passengers. Her voice was not loud, but it had a resonant quality, the kind used to lecturing a hall of 300 students that cut through the cabin's ambient noise. "You're right about one thing," Evelyn began, her tone even and measured. "My work is also very important. I'm an astrophysicist." She let the title hang in the air for a moment. A few passengers blinked, their expressions shifting from mild annoyance to intrigue. "I'm on my way to Geneva to deliver a keynote address on my team's research into an exoplanet called Kepler 78b. It's a fascinating place. It's about the size of Earth, but it orbits its star so closely that a year there lasts only 8.5 hours. Its surface temperature is estimated to be over 2,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt iron. It's a world of fire and rock, completely inhospitable to life as we know it." She paused, looking directly at Caroline, whose face was a mixture of confusion and fury. She had expected a shouting match, not an astronomy lecture. "I like the window seat," Evelyn continued, her voice softening slightly, "because it helps me remember what it is I actually do. In a few minutes, this several hundred-ton machine will lift us 7 miles into the sky. We'll be flying at nearly the speed of sound through the troposphere, a layer of air so thin that if the Earth were the size of an apple, it would be thinner than its skin. From that window, you can see the curvature of the Earth. You can see the line where the blue of our atmosphere fades into the black vacuum of space. That blackness, it goes on forever. It's filled with 100 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars. Many of those stars, like the one Kepler 78b orbits, have their own planets. We're talking about trillions upon trillions of worlds." She took a step closer into the aisle, standing beside Caroline now. You're worried about closing a multi-million-dollar deal. I'm worried about analyzing the atmospheric composition of a planet 700 light-years away to understand the very origins of our own solar system. And from where I'm sitting, she gestured back towards her seat. Both of our concerns, your deal and my research, are so infinitesimally small they barely register against the sheer, silent, overwhelming scale of the cosmos. She looked Caroline directly in the eyes. Your need for this specific patch of plexiglass right here, right now to feel secure, that registers even less. So no, ma'am, I will not be moving. I have a universe to contemplate. A stunned silence fell over the section of the cabin. The young man in 24B was staring at Evelyn with open admiration. Liam, the flight attendant, had a faint, unprofessional smile playing on his lips, which he quickly tried to suppress. Robert Preston looked at his wife, then at Evelyn, and seemed to shrink in on himself. Caroline's face, which had been flushed with anger, was now pale with humiliation. She had been intellectually and philosophically disarmed, and she knew it. She had come expecting a simple power play, a contest of will she was used to winning. Instead, she had been gently, but devastatingly put in her place, reminded of her own cosmic insignificance by a woman she had dismissed at a glance. Without another word, she turned on her heel, grabbed her husband by the arm, and stormed past him towards her actual seat, 25C. The aisle was clear. The drama was over. Evelyn sat back down in 24A, buckled her seatbelt, and turned to the window. As she did, the young man in 24B leaned over. That, he whispered, was the most epic takedown I have ever witnessed. I'm Ben, by the way. Evelyn smiled, a genuine warm smile this time. Evelyn, and thank you, Ben. As the plane finally began to push back from the gate, Evelyn leaned her head against the window. She had won the battle for her seat, but she felt a strange sense of unease. The look in Caroline Preston's eyes as she walked away wasn't just defeat. It was cold, hard fury. It was the look of someone who never, ever forgot a slight. Evelyn had a feeling this wasn't the last she'd see of her. The 8-hour flight to Geneva passed in a state of suspended tension. The initial ascent was breathtaking, as always. The concrete sprawl of New York gave way to the intricate coastline, which in turn dissolved into the deep uniform blue of the Atlantic. Evelyn watched it all, her mind momentarily quieted by the spectacle. The confrontation had left a bitter aftertaste, a dissonant note in the symphony of her journey. It wasn't the victory she savored, but the ugliness of the encounter that lingered. Behind her, in seat 25C, Caroline Preston stewed in a silent, simmering rage. She refused the meal service, snapped at the flight attendant who offered her a blanket, and spent the entire flight with her laptop open, typing with a furious intensity. Her husband, Robert, in 24C, seemed to fold into himself, creating a bubble of non-existence. He put on a sleep mask and noise-canceling headphones within minutes of takeoff, and did not emerge until the final descent. He was a man well practiced in the art of avoidance. Evelyn tried to focus on her work, but the woman's presence was a palpable weight. She could feel the burn of Caroline's glare on the back of her headrest. Every so often she would hear a sharp sigh or a muttered curse from the row behind. It was a petty, juvenile display, but it was distracting nonetheless. Midway through the flight, during a period of calm, Liam, the flight attendant, came by, ostensibly to collect trash. He leaned in slightly towards Evelyn. "Dr. Reed," he said in a low voice on behalf of the crew, "I apologize for that unpleasantness during boarding. You handled that with incredible class." "It's all right, Liam, thank you," Evelyn replied, appreciating the gesture. "It's not your fault. You did everything by the book." "Still," he said with a wry smile, "I've been flying for 12 years. I've never heard anyone use astrophysics to win an argument over a seat. It was refreshing." He winked and moved on down the aisle. The small act of solidarity helped. It reminded Evelyn that the world wasn't entirely populated by Carolines. She managed to get 2 solid hours of work done. refining the conclusion of her speech until every word shone with the precision and passion she felt for her subject. She wanted the people in that auditorium to feel, if only for a moment, the awe she felt every day. As the aircraft began its descent into Geneva, the first light of dawn was breaking over the snow-capped peaks of the Alps. The sight was spectacular, a jagged horizon of pink and gold. It was a view that demanded humility, a natural masterpiece that dwarfed human ambition. Evelyn pressed her forehead to the window, absorbing the beauty. It was for moments like this that she cherished her seat. They landed smoothly at Geneva Airport. As the seatbelt sign pinged off, the usual rush to stand and grab bags began. Evelyn remained seated, preferring to wait for the aisle to clear. As she waited, she overheard Caroline's sharp voice cut through the cabin noise again. She was on her phone, speaking in a rapid, aggressive tone. "No, the flight was dreadful. Utterly dreadful, but I'm here now. Is the car service confirmed? Good. And listen, I want an update on the Finch proposal. Has Alistair Finch's office confirmed his attendance at the welcome reception? They have? Excellent. This is our only shot to get FaceTime with him before the presentations begin. This Project Chimera deal lives or dies on his foundation's support. Don't screw it up. I'll be at the Fairmont Grand. Have the preliminary report sent to my suite." She snapped her phone shut. Finch? Alistair Finch. The name jolted Evelyn. Alistair Finch was a legend, a reclusive British tech billionaire turned philanthropist who had, in the last decade, poured hundreds of millions of dollars into pure scientific research through his Finch Foundation. He was notoriously private and eccentric, known for funding brilliant but unconventional projects that traditional institutions were too risk-averse to touch. And as it happened, the Finch Foundation was the primary benefactor of Evelyn's own research institute. They were the ones funding her work on Kepler 78b. The entire symposium she was attending was heavily sponsored by him. His attendance was the big rumor, the exciting X factor of the event. A cold knot formed in Evelyn's stomach. Caroline Preston, the woman who had belittled her, was here in Geneva to court Alistair Finch. Her multi-million-dollar deal, this Project Chimera, was dependent on the very same man who was, in essence, Evelyn's patron. Their worlds, which had collided so unpleasantly over a window seat, were far more entangled than she could have possibly imagined. She finally disembarked, stepping into the crisp, clean air of the Geneva terminal. She moved through passport control in a daze, the majestic view of the Alps now seeming like a portentous backdrop to a drama she had no wish to be a part of. She collected her luggage and found the prearranged car service that would take her to her hotel, the Hôtel de la Paix, a historic establishment overlooking the lake. As her driver loaded her suitcase, another sleek black sedan pulled up behind them. Caroline Preston emerged from the terminal, followed by a still silent Robert. She barked orders at her own driver, her face set in a mask of grim determination. For a moment their eyes met across the short distance. There was no recognition of their shared flight, no flicker of remorse. There was only a cold, dismissive glance from Caroline before she slid into the back seat of her car. Evelyn got into her own vehicle, the door closing with a soft thud. As they pulled away from the curb, she watched Caroline's car speed off in the same direction. They were both headed towards the heart of the same city, to orbit the same powerful man, on trajectories that now seemed destined for another, far more consequential collision. The small victory on the plane now felt like a prelude, the opening skirmish in a war she didn't know she was fighting. Geneva embraced Evelyn with an air of sophisticated tranquility. Her hotel room overlooked the shimmering expanse of Lake Geneva, with the iconic jet d'eau sending a plume of water hundreds of feet into the air. The city was a blend of old-world charm and modern precision, a fitting location for a conference dedicated to unraveling the universe's oldest mysteries with cutting-edge science. She spent the first day acclimatizing and connecting with colleagues. The conference venue was a state-of-the-art facility buzzing with the brightest minds in astronomy and physics. The air crackled with intellectual energy. Evelyn met up with her old friend and friendly rival, Dr. Marcus Thorne, a charismatic planetary scientist from Caltech. "Evelyn, there you are." Marcus greeted her with a warm hug. "The woman of the hour. Everyone's talking about your keynote. Rumor has it you're about to make the rest of us look like we're still using tinfoil telescopes." Evelyn laughed. "Hardly, Marcus. We just got a few lucky data sets. How's the search for Planet 9 going?" "As elusive as ever," he sighed dramatically. "It's like trying to find a black cat in a coal cellar on a moonless night, when you're not even sure the cat is real. But enough about my imaginary friend. The big news is that the man himself is here, Alistair Finch. He's not just attending, he's hosting a private welcome reception tonight for the keynote speakers and major partners. You're on the list, obviously." The knot in Evelyn's stomach, which had loosened slightly, tightened again. "He's really here? I thought it was just a rumor." "Oh, it's real. Saw his security detail casing the Fairmont earlier. They say he wants to announce a new round of funding, the Odyssey grants, for high-risk, high-reward exploration. Your project is exactly the kind of thing he loves," Marcus said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "This is huge for all of us." Evelyn tried to share his enthusiasm, but her mind kept drifting back to the woman on the plane. Caroline Preston, Project Chimera, the Fairmont Grand. It was all coalescing into a picture she didn't like. Meanwhile, across the city at the opulent Fairmont Grand Hotel, Caroline Preston was in full battle mode. Her suite had been converted into a command center. Charts and prospectuses were laid out on every available surface. Robert had made himself scarce, ostensibly to explore the city, but in reality, to escape the hurricane of his wife's ambition. Caroline was on a conference call with her team from Viridian Dynamics, a massive and aggressive aerospace and technology corporation. She was the executive vice president of strategic acquisitions. Project Chimera was her brainchild. It was a proposal for Viridian to partner with the Finch Foundation to create a new commercial entity for developing and monetizing deep space communication technologies. Technologies that were being pioneered in the very research institutes Finch was funding, like Evelyn's. In essence, Caroline wanted to take the pure science that Finch was paying for and turn it into a massively profitable enterprise for Viridian, with herself at the helm. "Listen to me and listen carefully," she was saying, pacing her suite. "Finch is old school. He's a romantic about science, but he's not stupid. He knows his foundation's discoveries have commercial potential. Our angle is that we, Viridian, can be the bridge. We can fast-track these innovations to the market, which in turn creates more revenue to be funneled back into his nonprofit science. We're not just taking, we're creating a self-sustaining ecosystem of discovery and profit." "He's been resistant to commercial partnerships in the past, Caroline," a voice on the speakerphone cautioned. "He sees it as tainting the purity of the research." "That's because no one has made him the right offer," Caroline retorted. "No one has shown him how to have his cake and eat it too. That's what we're doing tonight. The reception is our only chance to get in his ear before he gets bogged down in a week of academic presentations. I need to be charming, brilliant, and indispensable. This is the biggest deal of my career." Her entire future at Viridian, her reputation as a master deal-maker, it all hinged on impressing a man she had never met. She had spent months preparing for this, analyzing Finch's personality, his past investments, his known philosophies. She felt she knew him. She had a strategy for every conceivable conversation, a counter for every objection. She was a corporate predator, and Alistair Finch was her prize. She felt invincible. The trivial, irritating encounter on the plane was a distant memory, a meaningless annoyance that had been completely forgotten. That evening, Evelyn stood before the mirror in her hotel room. She had chosen a simple but elegant deep blue dress, the color of the twilight sky. Her braids were pinned up in a graceful arrangement. She looked professional, poised, yet her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't just a reception anymore. It felt like a chessboard, with pieces moving in the dark. She took a taxi to the Fairmont Grand. The hotel was even more luxurious than its reputation suggested, a palace of marble, crystal, and quiet, efficient service. The reception was being held in the Mont Blanc ballroom, which had a sprawling terrace offering a stunning view of the illuminated city and the dark, sleeping mountains beyond. The room was filled with a curated crowd of intellectual and financial heavyweights. World-renowned physicists chatted with Nobel laureates, while Foundation board members mingled with university deans. Evelyn recognized many faces from journals and academic conferences. She took a glass of sparkling water from a passing waiter and tried to appear casual, scanning the room. And then she saw her. Caroline Preston was standing near the entrance to the terrace, holding a glass of champagne. She was wearing a stunning, severe black gown that screamed power and expense. She was laughing at something a man in a tuxedo was saying, looking completely in her element. She radiated a predatory confidence. Evelyn felt a magnetic pull, an awful sense of inevitability. She instinctively took a step back, hoping to blend into a group of astronomers discussing gravitational waves. But it was too late. Caroline's gaze swept the room, cataloging everyone, assessing their importance. Her eyes passed over Evelyn, and for a split second, there was nothing. No recognition. To Caroline, Evelyn was just another face in the crowd, part of the scenery. And then a flicker, a tiny furrow in her brow. The memory surfaced, the airplane, the condescending remarks, the public humiliation. Caroline's smile didn't falter, but her eyes went cold as ice. The recognition was there, followed swiftly by utter contemptuous dismissal. She turned back to her conversation, a silent gesture that communicated more effectively than words. You are nothing. You don't belong here. You are irrelevant. Just then, a hush fell over the room. A man had stepped onto the small dais at the far end of the ballroom. He was older, in his late 60s, with a shock of white hair and piercing blue eyes. He was dressed in a simple dark suit, no tie. He looked more like a retired professor than a billionaire titan. It was Alistair Finch. He smiled warmly. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. I detest formal speeches, so I'll be brief. I'm here this week to listen, to learn, and to be inspired by the incredible work you all do. Science, true discovery, is the last great magic left in the world. It is a privilege to be its humble patron. Caroline Preston watched him with a hawk-like intensity, her plan no doubt clicking into motion. Finch continued, Tonight is simply about conversation. I look forward to speaking with many of you. In particular, he scanned the room, his eyes seeming to search for someone. I'm very eager to meet the brilliant mind behind the new Kepler 78b findings. Is Dr. Evelyn Reed here this evening? Every head in the room turned. Time seemed to slow down. Evelyn felt 100 pairs of eyes land on her. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Caroline Preston freeze mid-sip, her champagne flute hovering near her lips. Her head slowly turned, her eyes locking onto Evelyn's. The look on her face was one of pure, unadulterated shock. The dismissive smirk was gone, replaced by a ghastly pale mask of disbelief. The irrelevant little woman from the airplane, the one she had tried to bully out of a window seat, was not just a guest, she was the guest of honor. In that moment, Caroline Preston understood that she had made a catastrophic miscalculation. The chessboard was set, and she had just discovered she wasn't the queen. She might not even be a pawn. The ballroom, which had felt vast and anonymous moments before, now felt like a small, brightly lit stage with a spotlight fixed solely on Evelyn. The murmur of conversation died and was replaced by a wave of gentle applause as people identified her. Alistair Finch's face broke into a genuinely delighted smile as he spotted her. Ah, Dr. Reed, wonderful, he called out, his voice warm and inviting. He stepped down from the dais and began to walk toward her, parting the sea of academics and dignitaries like a modern-day Moses. Evelyn's mind raced. This was the moment her career had been building towards, recognition from the very person who made her work possible. Yet, the triumph was tainted by the sight of Caroline Preston, who stood rooted to the spot near the terrace doors. Caroline's face was a canvas of conflicting emotions, shock, dawning horror, and a desperate, frantic recalculation. The irrelevant woman from seat 24A was Alistair Finch's honored guest. The entire foundation of her Geneva strategy, had just crumbled beneath her feet. "It is an absolute honor to finally meet you, Doctor," Finch said as he reached her, shaking her hand firmly. His handshake was surprisingly strong, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners. "I've been following your team's papers for the last 18 months. The spectrographic analysis alone is revolutionary. Truly, you're forcing us to rethink the very mechanics of planetary migration. It's magnificent." "Mr. Finch," Evelyn managed, her voice steadier than she felt, "the honor is all mine. Your foundation's commitment to fundamental research is the only reason we were able to pursue such an unorthodox line of inquiry." "Nonsense." Finch waved a dismissive hand. "Money is easy. Ideas, true paradigm-shifting ideas, that's the hard part. That's what you bring to the table." He gestured around the room. "Come, walk with me. I want to introduce you to a few board members. They need to see the face of the genius they're betting on." As Finch guided her through the crowd, Evelyn felt like she was floating. Esteemed scientists she had only read about were smiling at her, shaking her hand. Marcus gave her a jubilant thumbs up from across the room. It was everything she could have hoped for. But her eyes kept drifting back to Caroline. Caroline had recovered her composure, at least on the surface. Her face was now a smooth, unreadable mask, the kind of polished armor a high-stakes lawyer wears into a courtroom. She was whispering urgently to a man beside her, likely a colleague from Viridian Dynamics. He was nodding, his expression grim. They were scrambling, trying to salvage their plan. Finch led Evelyn to a quieter corner of the room, where a few of his foundation's trustees were gathered. He introduced her with glowing praise, and she found herself capably discussing the nuances of her research, the technical challenges, and the potential implications. She was in her element, the anxiety replaced by the comfortable confidence of her expertise. After about 20 minutes of engaging conversation, Finch clapped his hands together. "Well, I'm monopolizing Dr. Reed, and there's a whole room of brilliant people I'm ignoring. Dr. Reed," he said, turning to her, "I'm hosting a small dinner tomorrow night after your keynote. Just a handful of people to discuss the future of the Odyssey grants. I would be honored if you would join us." "I would be delighted, Mr. Finch, thank you," Evelyn said, her heart soaring. "Excellent. My assistant will be in touch with the details." He gave her a final, appraising look. "You have a remarkable poise, Doctor. It's a rare quality." With a nod, he moved off to mingle with other guests. As soon as Finch was out of earshot, Marcus reappeared at her side. "A private dinner? Evelyn, you're not just in. You're the main event. Whatever you say in that keynote tomorrow, they're going to hand you a blank check." Evelyn smiled, but it was strained. "I hope so, Marcus." Her gaze drifted across the room again, and this time, it locked with Caroline's. There was no escaping it. Caroline had detached from her colleague and was now walking directly toward her, a fixed plastic smile on her face. Her approach was purposeful, her stride that of a predator closing in. Marcus, sensing the sudden tension, raised an eyebrow. "Friend of yours?" "Not exactly," Evelyn murmured. Caroline stopped in front of them. She completely ignored Marcus, her focus lasered onto Evelyn. "Dr. Reed," she began, her voice a syrupy, sweet concoction that didn't reach her cold eyes. "What an incredible coincidence seeing you here. I must admit I was quite surprised." "Mrs. Preston," Evelyn replied, her tone neutral. "Geneva is a small city when a conference is in town." "Indeed," Caroline said, her smile tightening. She gestured vaguely towards the memory of the airplane. "I do hope we can put our little misunderstanding during the flight behind us. Travel can be so stressful, you know. It can bring out the worst in people." It was a non-apology, an attempt to reframe her behavior as a mutual misunderstanding caused by stress, and it was deeply insulting. She was not sorry for what she did. She was sorry for who she did it to. "I wasn't stressed, Mrs. Preston," Evelyn said calmly. "I was simply sitting in my assigned seat." The directness of the retort made Caroline's smile flicker for a second. She quickly recovered. "Of course. Well, I'm Caroline Preston, Executive VP for Viridian Dynamics." She offered her hand as if they were meeting for the first time. "I was so fascinated by what Mr. Finch said about your work. Exoplanets. It sounds thrilling. In fact, my company, Viridian, is hoping to partner with the Finch Foundation on a project that would help accelerate the practical applications of exactly the kind of discoveries you're making." The pieces clicked into place for Evelyn. Project Chimera. It was a corporate takeover of scientific discovery. "We believe," Caroline continued, her voice dropping into its persuasive corporate pitch mode, "that pure science and commercial enterprise can have a powerful symbiosis. We want to build the infrastructure that takes your brilliant theories and turns them into tangible technologies that can change the world, and of course be quite profitable for everyone involved, including the Foundation." She was pitching her, right here, right now, trying to leverage their disastrous first encounter into a back-channel connection. It was audacious, shameless, and utterly transparent. She was trying to gauge if Evelyn could be an ally, a pawn to be used in her pitch to Finch. Evelyn looked at the outstretched hand, then back at Caroline's expectant face. She made no move to take it. "Mrs. Preston," Evelyn said, her voice quiet but firm, cutting through Caroline's practiced speech. "The goal of my work is not profit. It's knowledge. It's understanding our place in the universe. Some things, I believe, should be pursued for their own sake, not for their potential to be monetized." She paused, letting the words sink in. "And frankly, based on our interaction yesterday, I have serious doubts about whether your personal and corporate values align with the ethos of discovery and humility that science requires. And I'm quite certain they do not align with Mr. Finch's." It was a direct hit. Caroline's hand, still hanging in the air, slowly dropped to her side. The plastic smile dissolved, replaced by a flash of the raw, ugly fury Evelyn had seen on the plane. The mask was off. "You have no idea what you're talking about," Caroline hissed, her voice a low, venomous whisper. "You sit in your ivory tower looking at pretty pictures of space while people like me build the real world. You think you're impressive because an old man with a checkbook likes your little science fair project? Don't mistake a moment of flattery for actual power. You'll give your cute little speech, and then you'll be forgotten. I, on the other hand, am building an empire. Stay out of my way." Before Evelyn could respond, Caroline turned sharply and strode away, disappearing into the crowd. Marcus stared after her, his mouth slightly agape. "Okay," he said slowly. "Definitely not a friend. Who was that?" Evelyn took a slow, deep breath, the adrenaline from the confrontation coursing through her. "That," she said, her eyes following Caroline's retreating form, "is a woman who is about to have a very, very bad day." She now understood her role in this drama. It wasn't just to give a speech. Alastair Finch had praised her poise. He had observed her character. The universe, it seemed, wasn't just about to get a lesson in planetary formation. It was about to deliver a masterclass in karma. The day of the keynote arrived with a sense of electric anticipation. The main auditorium was packed to capacity, with over 1,000 scientists, students, and journalists in attendance. An overflow room had been set up with a live video feed. Evelyn's presentation, Kepler 78b, A Bridge to a New Formation Model, was the most anticipated event of the symposium. Backstage, Evelyn was a picture of calm. She ran through her slides one last time, not out of nervousness but out of a desire to honor the work. The confrontation with Caroline the night before had strangely solidified her resolve. It had clarified the stakes beyond the scientific. Her speech was now also a statement of purpose, a defense of the purity of knowledge against the encroachment of cynical commercialism. When she was introduced, the applause was thunderous. She walked onto the stage, stood at the podium, and looked out at the sea of faces. In the front row, she saw Alastair Finch, seated next to the symposium's director. He gave her an encouraging nod. A few rows back, she spotted Caroline Preston, seated next to the same man from the reception, her Viridian colleague. She was not looking at the stage, but down at her phone, projecting an air of bored indifference. It was a pathetic, transparent power play. Evelyn began to speak. Her voice, clear and confident, filled the hall. She started not with data, but with a story, the story of humanity's long fascination with the stars. She wove a narrative that connected ancient navigators to modern astrophysicists, all part of the same quest for knowledge. Then, she transitioned to the specifics of Kepler 78b. The slides behind her displayed stunning visuals, complex orbital diagrams, spectrographic charts that looked like vibrant modern art, and breathtaking artists' renderings of the lava planet. She spoke for exactly 45 minutes, building her case with methodical, unassailable logic. She explained how Kepler 78b's existence and composition shattered existing models, and then she proposed a new, more elegant theory. She made the impossibly complex seem accessible, the distant feel immediate. The audience was captivated. Even Caroline, she noted with a glance, had put her phone away and was watching, a frown of grudging concentration on her face. Evelyn ended her speech by returning to her opening theme. Kepler 78b teaches us that the universe is more creative, more violent, and more surprising than we ever imagined, she concluded, her voice resonating with passion. But more than that, it teaches us humility. In the face of such cosmic grandeur, our own squabbles, our ambitions, our deadlines, they all fade into perspective. The pursuit of knowledge is a sacred trust. It's a journey not toward profit or power, but toward awe. Thank you. The hall erupted. The applause was not just polite, it was a roar. The audience rose to their feet in a spontaneous standing ovation. Evelyn felt a wave of emotion wash over her, gratitude, relief, and a profound sense of fulfillment. She saw Alistair Finch on his feet, clapping enthusiastically, a look of immense satisfaction on his face. The private dinner that evening was held in a discreet wood-paneled dining room at a Michelin-starred restaurant. There were only 8 people at the table: Alistair Finch, 2 of his senior foundation directors, a Nobel-winning physicist, a university chancellor, Evelyn, and to her utter astonishment, Caroline Preston and her colleague, a man introduced as Mr. Davies, the CEO of Viridian Dynamics. Caroline must have pulled every string she had to get herself and her boss into this dinner. She looked triumphant, as if her presence alone was a victory. She was seated directly across from Evelyn. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. Finch began the dinner with a toast. "To Dr. Reed," he said, raising his glass, "for a presentation that reminded us all why we do what we do. Truly inspirational." Everyone echoed the toast. Caroline barely touched her glass to her lips. The conversation initially focused on Evelyn's speech. Then, as the main course was served, Finch smoothly pivoted. "Speaking of inspirational work," he said, his gaze sweeping the table, "it brings us to the future, the Odyssey grants. But before we discuss new avenues of discovery, I'd like to address a proposal that was brought to my attention." He looked directly at Caroline and Mr. Davies. Davies, the CEO, cleared his throat and launched into a polished, well-rehearsed version of the pitch Caroline had given Evelyn at the reception. He spoke of synergy, monetization, and a new paradigm of corporate scientific partnership, with Viridian Dynamics as the engine. Caroline sat beside him, nodding, interjecting with sharp, confident points. It was a formidable presentation. When they finished, an expectant silence fell over the table. Davies and Caroline both looked at Finch, confident they had made a compelling case. Alistair Finch took a slow sip of water. He placed the glass down deliberately. He did not look at Davies. He looked at Caroline. "Mrs. Preston," he began, his voice dangerously soft. "Your proposal is ambitious, but my foundation is built on a single, non-negotiable principle: character. We invest in people first, ideas second. Integrity, in my view, is the bedrock of all worthy endeavors, be it in science or in business." He paused, letting the weight of his words fill the room. Caroline's confident smile began to look brittle. "I had an interesting experience on my flight to Geneva," Finch continued, his eyes still locked on Caroline. "I fly commercial whenever I can. It keeps one grounded. I was seated in the first-class cabin, but the curtain was open during boarding. I witnessed a rather ugly incident back in the economy section. A woman, a platinum status passenger, tried to bully another passenger out of her window seat. She was rude, condescending, and invoked her status and the supposed importance of her work as a reason to disregard basic decency and airline rules. The color drained from Caroline Preston's face. Davies shot her a confused, alarmed glance. Evelyn felt her own blood run cold. He had seen the whole thing. The passenger she was attempting to intimidate, Finch went on, his voice as sharp and cold as a scalpel, handled the situation with a grace and intelligence that was frankly astounding. She chose not to meet arrogance with anger, but with perspective. She chose to elevate the conversation. I was, to put it mildly, deeply impressed by her character. He then turned his gaze to Evelyn, a flicker of warmth returning to his eyes. Imagine my delight when I discovered that this passenger of remarkable character was none other than our keynote speaker, Dr. Evelyn Reed. A collective gasp went around the table. Davies stared at Caroline, his face a mask of dawning fury and disbelief. Caroline looked as if she had been struck by lightning. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Finch turned his arctic gaze back to her. So you must understand my position, Mrs. Preston, Mr. Davies. Your proposal, Project Chimera, suggests you want to be the stewards of discoveries made by people like Dr. Reed. But you, Mrs. Preston, demonstrated that you lack the fundamental respect and decency to even share a cabin with her. You believe your work makes you important. Dr. Reed's work makes her humble. I know which quality I choose to invest in. He placed his napkin on the table. The meal was over. Mr. Davies, Finch said, his voice now flat and final. Viridian dynamics is everything I dislike about the modern corporate world. Arrogant, rapacious, and devoid of soul. Your proposal is rejected. My foundation will not be doing business with you. Not now, not ever. And I will be speaking to my colleagues on the boards of other research institutions to share my experience with your company's executive culture. I believe we're done here. It was a corporate execution, delivered with surgical precision. Caroline Preston sat frozen. Her entire career, her multi-million-dollar deal, her reputation, all incinerated in the space of 2 minutes. It wasn't just a no, it was a blacklisting. Davies, the CEO, stood up, his face purple with rage. He gave Caroline a look of such utter contempt that she physically recoiled. He didn't say a word to her. He just gave Finch a stiff, curt nod and walked out of the room. Caroline remained, a statue of ruin in a black designer gown. The woman who demanded everything had lost it all. The cause? A simple window seat, 24A, and a profound failure to see the person sitting in it. The karma was not just hard, it was absolute. So what's the lesson in the story of Dr. Evelyn Reed and Caroline Preston? It's a powerful reminder that the way we treat people when we think no one of consequence is watching is the truest measure of our character. Caroline's arrogance wasn't just a personality flaw. It was a critical vulnerability that cost her everything. She believed her status and the importance of her job put her above common decency, but she tragically misjudged both the woman she was belittling and the man she was trying to impress. Dr. Evelyn Reed didn't seek revenge. She simply held her ground with intelligence and grace. The universe, in the form of a quiet billionaire in first class, took care of the rest. This story is a testament to the idea that true power lies not in entitlement, but in integrity, humility, and perspective. Karma, it turns out, has a funny way of booking us all into the seats we truly deserve. What do you think? Have you ever witnessed a moment of instant karma like this? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of justice served at 35,000 feet, please hit that like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more real-life drama with twists you won't see coming.